Good morning. Glad you're all here. We want to welcome you to the 2025 Upper Santa Ana River Science Symposium. It's nice to see many familiar faces here today, and we look forward to learning more about each of you. I'm Milford Harrison. The lights went off. I'm Milford Harrison, and I have the real privilege of being the president of San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District. On behalf of our agency, our board, and the event planning committee, thank you for being with us today, spending some time here for the 6th anniversary, 6th year of our symposium. We would also like to give a great thank you to ESRI for the use of this incredible facility. Isn't this a great complex? I just refer to it as the house that Jack built. Our symposium continues to bring together professionals from across Southern California to share our experiences, findings, and enthusiasm for our beautiful Santa Ana River. Before we move into the rest of our program, would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I skipped right over the part where I was supposed to introduce myself, but I'm so happy to be here. Now that we are taking care of that preliminary, I am happy to introduce a leader in this region who is a biologist by trade. She loves fish. But to our great benefit, she is an innovator at her core. And we are very happy that she is our innovator. Please join me in welcoming San Bernardino Valley's CEO and General Manager, Heather Dyer.
Good morning, my people. This is my favorite day of the year. I get to see all my scientist friends that I only see here now. I'm very happy to be here. It is a wonderful celebration of science and conservation and innovation and big change and getting together and trying to collaborate to solve our problems and come up with solutions in the Santa Ana watershed, but it's spreading. Now it's cross-watershed this year. That's really exciting. Turns out we all have a lot of shared problems, a lot of shared challenges, and we can better address them if we work together and get rid of those jurisdictional boundaries between watersheds, species, fire, clean water, groundwater, clean air. None of those things stop at the lines on our maps, so why should we limit ourselves? So I'm happy to see everyone here today. I'm going to start out by doing a little bit of housekeeping. Just like last year, I'm happy to say the exits can be found on my left and my right in case of an emergency. The restrooms are in the atrium, so please feel free to go in and out to use the facilities. They get crowded during the breaks, so make sure try to get there early. I also wanted to note, you probably saw you can't bring any liquids or even water in here. It's a beautiful facility, and we want to keep it that way. They're very gracious in letting us use this room, and so we want to be respectful guests here, so please keep your coffee and your water and everything on the table outside the door. Also, this year there is a VIP meeting going on just on the other side of the hallway out here, so try to be very cognizant of not hanging out in that area and talking. If you could go out to the atrium so that ESRI or Esri can have their very important person meeting. across the hallway in their facilities, that would be great as well. So I also want to just start with some thanks and some notes of gratitude. First, to the San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District's Board of Directors. I think several of them are here today. If you don't mind just standing up, we appreciate your support of this. Or raise your hand if you don't want to stand up, but they're out there somewhere. We're very thankful that the board supports this. This is probably our biggest sponsorship of the year, to bring everyone together and try to keep it free as much as possible for the people to attend. So we're very grateful for that. We're grateful for the ongoing support of science in the Santa Ana River in terms of the biological studies that we do, the hydrogeological things that we do. Science is the foundation of all of our decisions, and I think everyone here in this room can appreciate the importance of science and database decisions. So thank you to the board. Also want to thank our sponsors. They're listed in the agenda and the program materials that were put out last night, I think it was. We've never had this many sponsors before. It's amazing. It's so exciting. 6 years ago, this was like a little homegrown thing that we just put together originally, at a hotel next door to our boardroom. And so that was like amazing then, but to see all these people now and have sponsors and a social hour, it's just a great honor. So thank you to all of our sponsors. A big shout out. This is volunteer driven. All the people who plan this and put this together, they have regular jobs to do, and they just do this in their spare time. And so all the people who are on the planning committee, the event staff from San Bernardino Valley, from our operations, to almost every person in our organization is helping out in some way. So we're very, very thankful to all the people who volunteered their time and knowledge and efforts towards this. And then finally, a big thanks to all of you here today. This would be a big bummer if this was, only a third filled. We were really excited to hear that all of the spaces were filled and people were so excited to come. So thank you for taking the time out of your day and coming down here to Redlands and being part of this. The original intent behind this conference was to bring together the people working on scientific studies and conservation projects and restoration projects and bring the body of knowledge together so that you can all get to know each other and that you can collaborate with each other and bring greater impact to our watershed. And today is proof that that original goal has been achieved. So I'm so happy that you're all here, and I'm very grateful for that. Next, I want to introduce Krista Campbell, who works for Esri, and she's going to say a few words, and then I will come back up here and close out the introductory. But Krista works in the water section. She's helping us with my next big idea, which is actually a watershed digital twin that we are trying to figure out how to build. But they are always there to kind of think about my big ideas, no matter how crazy they seem. And Krista is my partner in that and figuring out a way that we can achieve those goals to have better understanding of this watershed. So Krista Campbell of ESRI.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. How are you doing today? Yeah, thank you, Heather. It's really not me. There's a whole team of water professionals at Esri that are helping with Heather's vision, and we're all very excited about it. All right, I'm only going to take a few minutes of your time. First, how many of you have been to the Esri campus before? Okay, good number of you. How many of you are familiar with Esri and how we were founded? Okay, some of you. So we'll just briefly cover that. Esri, as you know, is founded here in Redlands. This is our headquarters. It was founded by Jack and Laura Dangerman in 1969, so we've been around for a little while. One thing I like to share about Esri that some people don't know is that Jack and Laura reinvest 30% of our profits right back into research and development. So it's really important for our founders to put back into our company and continue to develop solutions that are going to help not just you, but globally different communities that are struggling with various challenges. As many of you most likely know, Esri creates ArcGIS. This is our foundational software. It's a platform that creates understanding enables analytics. It's really so broad. And I was a customer before coming to Esri. I used our software, and I really feel like I barely use the tip of the iceberg. There's so much the software can do, but at its core, Jack and Laura really want our software to help people, to help them do their jobs better, to help them understand information, to help them visualize and use solutions that are going to provide those data-driven decisions to make the world a better place. And if you've been at Esri events, you've heard this before, but it really is a genuine place that Jack and Laura are coming from at this organization. All right, so the Santa Ana River Science Symposium, I took a look at the agenda today because I'm just going to share a few things that I think you might find useful or helpful. Maybe you already know about them, maybe you don't, but let's get started. First of all, we do have industry-specific web pages. I didn't know this as a customer, so I always share this when I get to present and talk about Esri. We do have a water resources specific website. If you haven't been to this website, check it out. We have a lot of resources here. We have some solutions. We have technical papers, case studies, ebooks. The next one I wanted to share is our conservation specific website. Same type of content you're going to find here as water resources, but more specific to conservation. And then this QR code is going to take you to just the index of all the different industry sites. We have more than 60 specific industries that are supported by professionals across Esri. So it's not just about conservation and water resources. We have an environmental team, we have a resiliency team, we have state and local government teams, and we all work together to do our best to support you. So if you haven't explored these pages yet, check them out, and maybe cross-industry where you're at with some other industries, because we do create industry-specific solutions that can be downloaded for free if you're a customer. And not just that, but some of the solutions in a different industry may still be applicable to the work that you're doing. I find this quite a bit, so just a little tip there. How many of you are part of the Esri community? Not that many. Okay, this is a good slide then. The Esri community is just an online, maybe you could call it a forum, but this is where not just Esri experts, but our customers as well engage with one another and post questions, post answers. There's blogs, videos, a lot of technical papers. These communities are very active. Particularly, I'm aware of the water resources community. A lot of my colleagues are in this community regularly and providing feedback and answering questions. But the important thing about this is the more people that participate, the more knowledge we're going to have to share across our communities. So check those out. Again, there are multiple communities across all of the different industries. I'm just highlighting these two. Okay, another question. You didn't know this was going to be all about questions, huh? ArcGIS Living Atlas of the World. How many of you are using data from the Living Atlas? Oh, just a few. All right, then if you don't look at anything else on these slides, this is the one you want to check out. The Living Atlas of the World has thousands of data sets in it. Some of them are curated by Esri. Some of them come from federal government entities, state government. Some of them come from people just like you who are sharing the information that they've gathered or the research that they've done, and they've made it shareable within the ArcGIS Living Atlas of the World. If you're an Esri customer, you have access to most of this content. And I'm not exaggerating, thousands and thousands of data sets, sometimes feature classes, sometimes layers. Check it out, there's a lot going on in here. This is just one example in HD plus high resolution. This is available through the Living Atlas of the World. It provides mean annual flow and velocity estimates for rivers and streams. It's a very cool data set, might be something you're interested in. And then also we have the biodiversity hotspots. These are just two examples of data that's in there. Check it out. It might be useful to you for your work. If not, maybe you'll just find something interesting in there. I know I have. All right. And then this is the QR code. This one will take you to just the overview page for the Living Atlas. It's not going to take you to those specific examples, but it's going to take you over to that main page, and I suggest using some of the pre-designated topics or using the search capabilities, because there's just so much content in here. If you just start browsing, yeah, you're going to find interesting stuff and you might have fun, but if you're looking for something specific, you're going to have to wade through that huge data set in there. But please check it out. This is the one thing I think you as a group would find interesting, because there's a lot of biodiversity, conservation, sustainability information in there. And that's it. I'm not going to take up a lot of time. Again, I'm Krista Campbell. If you have any questions about Esri or how we support the work you're doing, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I'm happy to either help you myself or connect you with one of my team members that can help get your questions answered.
Thank you, Krista. Like I said, she is an amazing resource if you have questions, if you have trying to find data, if you want to put data in a certain place, how do you share it, things like that. As you all know, I hope you all know that Jack and Laura Dangerman are very well-established and well-known people promoting and actually putting their money behind conservation and biodiversity. And so we're so happy that we have this resource right here in our own backyard in Redlands, and such a tremendous supporter of science and conservation as a field. So I just wanted to make a few remarks about what I would call maybe legacy or impact. I've been thinking a lot about, why are we doing this and what is our purpose? And, as Milford said, I'm a biologist, a fish biologist, and I had the tremendous honor of being assigned to the Santa Ana River and a very dynamic little species called the Santa Ana sucker, who I'm sure you saw on the poster that we made for this year. And so when I first started in the Santa Ana River, I had no idea the impact that I could have just as one person in a watershed, in an area of ecological value in Southern California, in a community of people. And so I started thinking about, as preparing this, like what each of you might have given or will give to this community, and how it's our responsibility to pay it forward. If you're late in your career, heading into retirement, if you're mid-career and you have people working for you or you're supporting projects, we have this amazing opportunity to have an impact that will be long-lasting beyond us. And so I'm reading this great book. I really recommend it. It's called Greatness. It's a very simple and small book. And over the Christmas holidays, I spent some time with the book. And so I think it might be audacious to say, but I'm in a group of friends and community that you know me well, so it's not about ego. So I will audaciously say that I am trying to live a life of greatness. And what does that mean to me? It's not about me. It's not about me standing up here before you all and, talking about my work. It's about what can we do for others. So greatness, as I see it, is the place beyond success. This book talks about 2 traits in people who live a life of greatness, and I'd like to promote this to all of you and all of the young students, especially in the room, and the people who can put a hand out and help the people around them. Greatness and a life of greatness is the need to achieve and the need to give. Greatness does not bask in the limelight, it redirects it towards others. People who live in true greatness use their journey and achievements to change the world around them. And that's what I'm trying to do, and I think that's what a lot of you are trying to do. True greatness lifts others, encourages others, and inspires others with their words and their exceptional actions. And I've been in this watershed for 14 years, down in the river, in all of these meetings, trying to come up with new and innovative ideas about how we can better understand our watershed. And it is happening. We have someone from UCR doing a watershed health index that's only been done in a handful of rivers across the world, and our river is one of them. That's amazing to me. There is so much rich conservation going on in this river. Restoration projects that are on the cutting edge of what we understand can be valuable for species and ecological communities. There are people out there doing the good work, the science in the river to understand the populations and the habitat values that we have and how we can make them better. And so I want to redirect the light that I'm experiencing right now on this stage. I want to redirect it towards all of you. That's what we're here for today and tomorrow, is to share those experiences and that knowledge and that understanding so that it can live on beyond any one of our careers. People of greatness, they call out and guard the dreams of others. They are dream guardians, which I love. It makes me emotional when I think about the people in this room who were guardians of my dream. Not just to get this job, but to live a life of impact. And so thank you to every single person in here who was part of my journey to get to this place. And I will be a dream guardian for those people beyond me. So I want to thank each and every one of you, and you know who you are, hopefully. I've shared it, for being part of my journey and to help me get here. And second, I call on each and every one of you who's attending here these 2 days to be the dream guardians of others. Those students that are going to come back here and talk to each one of you about their potential career in this field, be their dream guardian. Listen to them, listen to their dreams. Be open-minded and actually actively think about how you can help them. I ask you to do that because people did that for me. And I think everyone here has had that person who gave them a boost up to help them achieve this dream career that we all have. We can't take science, and especially conservation, for granted. It's going to take the work and the commitment and the grit and the resolve of every single one of us to achieve our goal of having a healthy ecology, a functional system, a community that supports and treasures the natural resources around us. And so I ask you to maintain that commitment even when times get hard, and to be that dream guardian, not just for people, but for all of the living things in our watershed. When you give is when you really live. And so I'm going to try to prove that to each and every one of you every single day of my career. And I am so eternally grateful for this opportunity to make a positive impact in this watershed. Thank you so much. I forgot who I'm supposed to introduce next. Hang on. Let me get some reading glasses on. Okay, so the next person up is Kurt from UCR, who I think is also going to introduce someone.
Yeah. Thank you.
Seriously, though, if you don't know Kurt Anderson from UCR is doing amazing work in the watershed, and he's one of those people who is promoting the dreams of others. Students, graduate students, so important, but he is one of the people who's trying to promote greater understanding of our watershed, and we are very, very appreciative.
Thank you so much. That was, thanks for those inspiring remarks and for that introduction. So I'm going to be moderating the first session. So we're going to go right into our talks now. And let's see, I think we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to acknowledge our event sponsors. A lot of people put in money this year to help the event happen. You can see the agenda and abstracts at the QR code. If some folks haven't been able to download it immediately, you can get the agenda from the QR code. So, and upload your photos. There's an opportunity to upload photos from the day, so let's share those. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with our first talk. We're going to be starting with Eric Stein, who's going to be talking about a California Environmental Flows Framework. Okay.
All right, well, thanks Kurt and Heather for that great introduction. And I'm honored and privileged to lead off the talks today, and so I'm going to jump right in because I know we have a jam-packed agenda, and so I'll jump right in to talk about the California Environmental Flows Framework. This is a framework for thinking about ecosystem flows in these dynamic watersheds that we work in. And it's been one of the really gratifying for me to work on this over the last 6 or 7 years, because not only does it represent, I think, a technical accomplishment, but it also represents something that's brought a lot of different agencies and entities together to hopefully form some consensus on how to begin to address these really challenging questions about balancing flows for the environment and flows for all of the human uses that we need from our watersheds. So here's my sort of take-home messages, what I want you to walk away from. I don't need to tell anybody in this audience that we live in challenging times in terms of water resource management between drought, climate change, changing land use conditions. And that we collectively, as a community, have been doing a lot over the last decade in particular to think about more innovative and creative ways to manage our water resources. But as we do that and we think about stormwater capture, wastewater reuse, groundwater management, the need to think about how to balance those uses with the needs of the environment becomes even more critical. And so working on this project, what I'm hoping to leave you with today is talking about a framework, the California Environmental Flows Framework, which is not a model but an approach for how to work through these challenging questions. And the most important thing to understand is this is ready for prime time. It's being used all over the state. There's a lot of resources that have been developed and are continuing to be developed to support this. And so hopefully there's something in here that you can find useful in your work. So this is essentially, as I said, it's a technical sort of approach and guidance. It was co-developed by a consortium of state agencies, NGOs, and universities through the California Environmental Flows Work Group, which is a subcommittee of the California Water Quality Monitoring Council, which hopefully you're all familiar with, and it's currently being implemented across the state. So the nexus, sort of the motivation for doing this and how this came together is, as you're probably aware, there's lots and lots of policies around the state, from the cannabis cultivation policy to SGMA, to the recycled water policy, to the water action plan, that are all trying to deal with these issues of water use and for various uses, right? And so oftentimes these policies don't necessarily talk well to each other, or they're administered by different entities. And so about 6 or 7 years ago, the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the State Water Board sort of came together to try and develop a more cohesive framework for answering a lot of the water resource management questions that are critical to all of the policies that are shown on the screen. And so when people ask me, what is the most sort of gratifying or important thing about the California Environmental Flows Framework, I tell them that we got the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the State Water Board to agree on a common framework and approach for how to answer these questions. And that sounds trivial, but for any of you who've worked with these agencies, that is not trivial at all, right? So I really congratulate those agencies for coming together to work on this. And so the framework can be used to answer questions like how much water should be left in streams, how much groundwater should we be pumping or discharging, how much stormwater should we capture, or how much wastewater should we be reusing. So these are the types of questions that we're trying to answer with this framework. So the framework has 3 components. I'm just going to walk you through it briefly and then show you a URL at the website at the end where you can get more information. We've broken it up into this sort of part A, B, and C. And so briefly, part A really starts with this question of understanding the natural flow regime of the system we're working with and identifying what is necessary for the ecology, right? So this is an important starting point because we start with what do we think are the flows necessary to support the ecology? That's our foundational starting piece. In section B, we recognize that many of the streams across the state have been altered. They might have been physically altered by incision, downcutting, or channelization. They might have temperature effects or other losses of floodplain connectivity. And so those fundamental natural flow ranges are then adjusted to account for the physical constraints not necessarily land use per se, but sort of the physical changes that have happened to those river systems. So parts A and B are really about science. It's about understanding the flows and the flow regime in the system and what's necessary to support the ecology. So that's sort of the science pieces. Section C is sort of where the real fun begins, because that's the human part, right? Section C is the trade-off analysis, where we start to think about those other uses, agriculture, municipal water use, things along those lines, and how do we start to balance the needs for the environment with the needs for those other uses. But importantly, we start with the ecological needs first, and then layer in the human uses after, and try to understand how to make those trade-offs and balances, which fundamentally is the reverse of the way we've often done it in the past, right? Where we've started with the human uses first, and then we've sort of added the environmental piece as sort of the afterthought on the back end. So we've tried to flip that narrative a little bit. The other, besides sort of flipping that sequence, the other big, in my opinion, fundamental change from the way we've thought about flows is when I started working on these issues, a couple decades ago, we were thinking about minimum flows and base flows and things along those lines. And what SEF does is takes what we call a functional flows approach. So it starts by thinking, what are the flows necessary to maintain the functions of the ecosystem that we care about? And so this conceptualized hydrograph shows that for different portions of the annual hydrograph are important to support different functions over depending on what you're interested in. So it could be spawning, it could be migration, it could be flushing of pools, it could be breeding pools. So we're thinking about the functional components of the hydrograph. Now we take the understanding of the functional flows of the functional components of the hydrograph, and we created these 5 functional flow components. And so what this cartoon is showing is essentially, if we think about the annual hydrograph, there are these key components that are ecologically important. And so you have things like the fall pulse flow, or the winter peaks, winter base flow, the spring recession, the summer base flow. Those are components that are ecologically important. Now, what is important to understand here is we're not trying to recreate the natural hydrograph, because we know that these systems have been fundamentally altered in many cases. And so recreating the natural hydrograph is not something that, unfortunately, is often not achievable. But what we can try to do is we can try to account for and recreate those key functional elements of the hydrograph that are necessary to support the ecology. So the 2 important things about this graphic are, number one, it's all about recreating those key functional elements over the course of the entire annual hydrograph, not just one portion of the hydrograph. And also, it's not about any individual species, like the Santa Ana sucker or the steelhead. It's about the broader ecology of the system, and thinking about how to sustain the broader ecology of the system. And then we can bring in the needs of the individual species on top of that, because fundamentally, if you protect the ecology or manage for the ecology of the system, you'll most often account for many of the needs of those individual species of concern. And we actually do believe, and I think it's been borne out through our initial case studies, that this does provide a lot more flexibility in how we manage these water resources by thinking about the entire annual hydrograph and not just critical seasons. And so what we can do is that we can take these 5 flow components, and then we've created a series of flow metrics. So these are quantifiable numbers then that we can think about what are the elements of magnitude, timing, and duration of these 5 flow components, and what do we need to manage for. So we can actually create ranges of values for these during different times of the years that we want to manage toward. So again, that's kind of generally how it works. And so when we apply this, we usually, again, it's usually done in a collaborative work group manner with the agencies, the affected entities. And so we begin by asking, what are our management questions? Again, we start with those natural flows, as I've talked about. We refine those based on local information. And again, everything on that top half of the line there, that's sort of thinking about the ecology and thinking about the science piece. And then the bottom half, that section C, is where we start to bring in all of those other elements that I talked about and produce what we eventually call a series of environmental flow targets. So that's kind of the high-level overview. I'm not going to go into much more detail in the interest of time, but I did want to tell you that throughout the course of implementing this, and this is sort of an ever-growing list like we heard about earlier, there's been a whole series of tools that have been developed. I'll show you the website at the end where you can get these. And so we've got different types of calculators, R scripts, GIS layers, that can be used to support the different elements of implementing this framework. So I'm just going to highlight one in particular just to give you an example. This is the Natural Flows database. This is something we worked on. It was a collaboration between USGS and the Nature Conservancy. And what this is a statistically based model that's valid statewide. And so what it allows you to do is go to any NHD reach in the entire state of California, and you can get an estimate of what those natural flow ranges are for those 5 functional flow components that I showed you. So that sort of CEF Part A, those 5 components, you can get the natural flow ranges for any NHD reach in the state from this website. And again, you can break it up by wet years, moderate years, or dry years to see how those vary over the course of different types of water year types. The reason this is important is when we started this with the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the State Water Board, they felt that it was important to have a foundational piece that's appropriate, that can be applied throughout the state of California. So it means that you can actually go in and start the CEF process and at least get through sections A and B in almost any region in the state without necessarily having to do watershed-specific modeling or analysis. Now, of course, if you have the opportunity to do that, that's always preferred because it gives you much deeper depth of understanding and knowledge. But if you don't have the resources or the ability, or you're just in a preliminary exploratory mode, you can use these tools to begin this process anywhere in the entire state of California. And then just 2 quick examples. Once we get into specific watersheds, we can start to apply this in terms of the one on sort of my right as I'm looking at the screen, the map. This is in South Orange County where we've used this process to prioritize areas for storm drain capture. So where are the areas where we can manage storm flows in a way that have the most benefit to the resources. So it's a prioritization of storm drain capture in areas that will benefit water quality and species. And the one on my left as I look at the screen is in the LA River, and this is an example where we looked at, on the x-axis, as we reduce the effluent discharge from the water reclamation plants, so going from the baseline conditions and decreasing that effluent discharge, what does that do to the dry season flow, and how does that affect our ability to support either riparian habitat or marsh habitat? So you can start to look at this from a trade-off perspective and say, how much wastewater can I reuse while still protecting the needs of those ecological resources. All right, so just a couple of quick examples. So just to wrap up, my last slide, we think that this at least moves the ball forward because it does provide a mechanism for us to start doing these types of analyses for any stream reach in the state of California as a starting point. It provides a structured approach that we can step through with our partners and our stakeholder groups, and we can walk through this approach in a very structured manner to come to these answers, hopefully. It provides a way for starting with the ecology and then trying to balance the ecology with the human needs. And it has been co-developed by multiple agencies and entities, and so it has an agreed upon approach. And I'll say that if you want to sort of continue to learn more about this, I'll show you the website is, let's not go back. That should have been on, didn't show up. Anyway, you can email me or Chris Taniguchi-Kwan, who leads our program. It was supposed to be a URL, but it's cef.ucdavis.edu, so it's easy, cef.ucdavis.edu, but you can email me. And I would encourage you also to sign up for the California Environmental Flows Work Group. They meet quarterly. The meetings are web-based. They're open to everybody, and it's a forum for a lot of folks working in this area to share experiences, tools, challenges, et cetera, and continue to help these programs grow. So with that, thank you.
So we're going to, in the interest of time, we're going to move to the next talk. But I'm sure Eric will be around and would be excited to answer questions. That was a really exciting talk. So our next speaker is Gary Jin from UC Riverside, and he's going to be talking about results of freshwater health assessment on the Santa Ana River watershed. Go ahead, Gary.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gary, and I'm a fifth-year PhD candidate in evolution, ecology, and orzobiology at UC Riverside. Today, I'll be giving my talk titled Results of Freshwater Health Assessment in the Santa Ana River Watershed, which is about my work with the Valley District to apply the Freshwater Health Index to conduct a baseline assessment of freshwater health. Work is ongoing, so results presented here are preliminary pending additional data that I'm waiting to receive and also further insights. Oh, is it? Okay. Sorry. Okay. No? Nope. Okay, awesome. Okay, sorry. To begin, I mentioned using the Freshwater Health Index, or FHI, to conduct the baseline assessment. The FHI is a tool that helps us understand the relationship between humans and freshwater systems. Here, I'm defining freshwater health as the ability for freshwater systems to deliver ecosystem services and benefits sustainably. So this figure that you see right here provides a visualization of the relationship between humans and freshwater systems. Here in orange, stakeholders set and respond to rules and regulations and modify ecosystems through management and resource utilization. These modifications can change ecosystem vitality or health, shown in green, and in turn alter water flows, which directly impacts the delivery of ecosystem services like clean drinking water and irrigation. To help understand and assess freshwater health, the FHI looks at quantitative indicators for the three components of freshwater health, which are ecosystem vitality or health, ecosystem services, and governance and stakeholders. Ecosystem health refers to the ecosystem structure and processes underlying freshwater ecosystem services. For example, water quality and water quantity. Ecosystem services refers to the benefits to stakeholders like water supply reliability and flood regulation. And finally, governance and stakeholders refers to governance, which are the decision-making and power-sharing structures and processes, and the stakeholders, individuals and groups that depend on the services provided by a water basin and or are involved in decision-making. Each component is assessed with a suite of measurable indicators that are aggregated into a final score from 0 to 100. And you can think of this like a report card that provides a snapshot on the state of freshwater health. Having these scores is useful since they help us see trends and trade-offs currently and over time. The methodology of the FHI has been applied to numerous water basins around the world, as Heather mentioned, but not in the Mediterranean climates that we have in Southern California, which is a huge problem. Freshwater systems in Mediterranean climate regions are among the most threatened, so it's important to look at the state of freshwater health from multiple angles at once, from social all the way to ecological. The Santa Ana is the first Mediterranean climate region that is being studied using the FHI. The next set of slides will show preliminary results that assess freshwater health with the FHI in relation to the three components of freshwater health that I mentioned. So I'm not going to be able to share every single calculation, but I'll just show you some highlights, and we can talk more if you want more details. For ecosystem vitality, the watershed scored a 49, which indicates deteriorated ecosystem health and functioning. And there was a multitude of factors I considered when calculating this score, from water quantity, water quality, the extent of physical modifications, and biodiversity. And some highlights that came from this calculation include the large amount of impervious surfaces in the upper watershed in particular, shown here on the left, with the white indicating more impervious and the blue being less. And the problem with impervious surfaces like compacted soil and man-made surfaces like paved roads, parking lots, and roofs is that it accumulates pollutants, it exacerbates flooding and bank erosion, and reduces water table recharge. So not surprisingly, all the in white is where most of the people live. And another consideration was the high amount of invasive species and endangered species in the watershed, like tamarisk and the Santa Ana sucker, respectively. Next, the Santa Ana scored a 86 for ecosystem services, indicating the delivery of ecosystem services is sufficient. So one thing I considered was how well protected the Santa Ana is. And the map on the left shows the protected areas in the Santa Ana, which includes national, state, and regional parks, as well as land trust preserves laid on top of the stream network of the Santa Ana. And about 45% of the river is in a protected area, which is great, because when we compare that to the global target set by the UN Convention on diversity of 17%, we're in a good spot. Another metric I was looking at was the quality of the water delivered by the Santa Ana for different sectors. And for this calculation, I looked at time series data for 20 water quality parameters, which you can see on the right, collected from 2006 to 2022, taken from the Santa Ana River Annual Water Quality Report. When accounting for the frequency and also the amount that the parameters deviated from thresholds that were taken from the Water Quality Control Plan for the Santa Ana River Basin, we see that while 6 of the parameters highlighted in red deviated from the thresholds at least once in their annual averages, overall, the final calculated index score was high, suggesting that water quality is being well managed. When it comes to measuring governance and stakeholders, we can break it down into 4 components. Enabling environment on the left, which concerns the policies, regulations, and mechanisms surrounding governance. Second is stakeholder engagement, which concerns how stakeholders interact and the level of transparency and accountability present. Third is vigilant and adaptive governance, which is how well information is collected and interpreted to set goals. And finally, we have effectiveness, which is the outcomes of policies and investment decisions. And the way that we can measure these indicators is through stakeholder perceptions. When implementing a perception-based survey to assess governance, it's important to understand that stakeholders base their actions on their perceptions, impressions, and views, and that objective or fact-based data, even when available, often captures the de jure notion of governance on the books, which can differ from the de facto reality that exists on the ground. So for example, there could be a disconnect between the robust regulatory environment on paper and the actual experience of businesses, policymakers, and managers. We want to capture a broad range of perceptions in the watershed across sectors and location with enough respondents to reduce the influence of any one individual on the results and offer some statistical significance and confidence with the results. The ultimate goal is to provide the social context for the state of ecosystem health and services, which is the novelty of the FHI, and to better understand the needs of stakeholders to facilitate and promote collaboration. I'll be sure to conduct a follow-up to get feedback from collaborators at the Valley District and others to get more nuance and further context on the results. And so just the survey at a glance, the survey consists of 51 questions where respondents were asked to evaluate statements regarding the 4 indicators of governance robustness that I mentioned in the previous slide, using a 1 to 5 scale. And so in addition, there were also 3 questions asking for their additional thoughts, whether they focus on the upper, lower, or entire watershed, which I defined the cutoff being Prado Dam, and also their affiliation. So for example, are they in a government agency like a water district, or do they work for like Fish and Wildlife? Maybe an academic institution or also a consulting firm. And so all these responses were aggregated and anonymous at the end to provide a final indicator score for governance and stakeholders that can be used by the Valley District and its partners in their ongoing water conservation efforts. Thanks to the efforts of those who received information on this survey at the last symposium and those who attended my workshops earlier this month, I received a total of 33 responses, and I'm still looking for more. So taken together, governance and stakeholders scored a 62, indicating that there are areas of improvement in regulatory processes and collaboration to meet the demands of the future. For sector, most respondents were from a government agency, so I separated that further into federal, state, and local agency. I also had 4 respondents from academia and 3 from consulting. For the areas of focus within the watershed, most respondents focused primarily on the upper watershed, followed by the entire watershed. And so the table on the right shows the scores for each of the 4 indicators. And since I got a lot of responses just recently, more analysis and refinement needs to be done. And also, as I mentioned before, more responses. So if you haven't had a chance to complete the survey, you can still do so. So I've been sending a flurry of emails, but if you've missed them, please come talk to me afterwards. And lastly, this table summarizes my results. And what we can see is that there is a trade-off between ecosystem health and ecosystem services, as shown by a 52 for ecosystem vitality, while there's a much higher score of 86 for ecosystem services. But even with a score of 62, we can still mobilize to address and ensure a sustainable watershed for the future. And as the first application of the FHI to a Mediterranean climate water basin, once these indicator scores are finalized, this assessment will provide a foundation in which future assessments can be conducted with collaborators across the watershed to highlight trade-offs, data deficiencies, and areas of improvement. So even in areas where I didn't get data, that's also information, because then that will point to, oh, maybe we should have information on that, which we don't have currently. And areas of improvement, and also this assessment of the Santa Ana River, not only in its novelty based on the climate, it can also serve as a case study of a multifaceted assessment of freshwater health in other Mediterranean climate regions and beyond. And so, as I've been mentioning, this work is ongoing, and I look forward to continuing to work with you all. If you'd like to follow up with me or ask about the survey and you'd like to take part in it, please come talk to me after this talk. I'd like to thank all my collaborators and those who I've had the pleasure of talking to about this study over the last couple years. And I'd also like to thank you all for listening.
I think we have time for one or two questions.
Oh, yes.
Yes, hi. So from Eric's presentation, your presentation, have these results, has this whole process by chance been run by SCAG, Southern California Government?
So I've been working primarily with the Valley District on this effort, but Kai's been a really, really great resource in helping direct me to. Different people. So I have talked to Eric about some of this work, and I feel like I've talked to like a bunch of people about this. So you might finally be seeing me for the first time, but I've been sending emails about data. So not directly, but I have talked to people from there.
From SCAG?
Yes,
Okay.
as well.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Lots of your survey seems to be coming from either academia or governance. I was wondering if you had any plans to ask the general public.
Yes. So the nature of the survey is that it asks a lot of specific and sometimes technical questions when it comes to the water basin, and so I've mostly been keeping the survey within our conservation and science community, since we are the most equipped to answer these questions. And I think even within this community, there's still a lot of people that could be potentially able to take the survey and contribute. So I don't have any plans of opening to the general public, so it's just been kind of like word of mouth, or you know someone who knows someone who knows someone.
I have a question back here.
Oh.
Yeah. Have you, so your water quality metrics come from 2006 to recent, it sounds like. Have you gone back and can you go back and look at the NACWA data and some of the other water quality metrics from the late 80s through the 90s through 2003, where USGS did a ton of water quality sampling throughout the basin, and then say, what would you have scored the system at that point in time before some of the sulfates, nitrates, and other adjustments were done? Because then it might be that really there's been a 500% increase in health of the system between the 90s metrics and the current water quality metrics, and that might be a better metric to show an increased trajectory in health, or not. But I mean, is that something you could possibly do?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I think I've been asking a lot. I mean, this is not data that I've gathered personally, so it's just data that I've been able to get, and the data that I did receive was starting from 2006 all the way to 2022. So that's not to say that I'm limiting myself to this time period. It's just if I have the data, I'll look at it. So I'd love to talk to you after this.
I'm afraid we need to move on in the interest of time. Gary will be around all day today if you have other questions. Thank you. Okay, our next talk is from Richard Boone and Michael Drennan. We're going to be talking about towards a middle Santa Ana River multi-benefit water quality strategy. One of these ones.
Just hold on. Here we go. Back, and then that's forward. Green is forward.
Green is forward.
All right, good morning. That's the peril of not being able to bring coffee into the auditorium. So, I'm Richard Boone. I'm Chief of the Watershed Protection Division for Riverside County Flood Control and Water Conservation District. And this is a tag team presentation with my colleague Michael Drennan. Michael's Vice President of Water Resources and Green Infrastructure for NV5. So our presentation is a little different compared to the preceding speakers. It's more on the institutional aspects of watershed management rather than the science and research. So I also want to acknowledge in making these remarks the work with Matt Romero and Jacqueline Tobia with MLA Studio as we bring to you or talk to you about our efforts to think about a multi-benefit water quality strategy for the Santa Ana River. And the motivation has a number of different elements to it, but foundational to this effort is the renewal right now of the watershed's municipal MPDS stormwater permit. This is a permit that will, for the first time, combine the municipalities of Orange County, Western Riverside County, and San Bernardino County under one piece of regulation, one permit that holds them responsible for the quality of the water that drains out of their interconnected municipal separate storm drain systems. And this work on a multi-benefit strategy is intended to inform the permit renewal that is ongoing as I speak. So the vision for this effort is described there, but this is where I go off my notes. I mean, really, the thought process that Michael and I have here is motivated by